Today we're taking a look at the third generation Crane Purton toilet, a toilet that's been made since the early 1960s and was made up until the mid 1990s. The Crane Purton has always been a very strange and super rare model. This is its third generation, and this is one of those large trap toilets. How does it compare to some other Crane toilets? Well, let's find out. The overall design of this toilet is very simplistic. There's really not a lot to write home about. It's a very simplistic bowl. On the outside, that is. The trapway opening is very strange, honestly, but you can also tell how deep and large the trapway is. Like, it goes down pretty far. And right in the middle is the siphon jet. It kind of slopes down into the trapway, which is interesting, honestly. Let's have a look at a flush. This particular one has a very long flush, but it is pretty good overall. Now, while this does have a straight down flush, I definitely think it was executed pretty good, very similar to the Sands. Now, you would think that the pulling factor would be pretty good on this, considering it has a straight down flush and has some aiding ram jets to aid the flush. Well, I hate to disappoint you, but that is really not the case. This is one of those weird toilets that has a weird 50-50 shredding issue. Similar to the first generation standard tri-boy I reviewed, this is one of those toilets that requires at least 5 gallons or more to really complete the flush and rarely shred. This is unfortunately that case. Anything lower than that, then you would probably have some slight shredding issues. I really can't explain it, but I think this toilet was just made for 5 gallons and 5 gallons only. They did make this for 3.5, but unfortunately it just does not work as well. Another issue I think I noticed is the large trapway. Now, you can actually tell this has a very large trapway. I think that might interfere with the pulling factor a little bit. While this does have a good siphon, I definitely think the siphoning area is very weird and probably causes some weird issues because it's a very deep trapway. I wish I could explain this phenomenon better, but it's a weird problem I've noticed with shredding. Now, you're probably thinking that the performance is excellent, and you would be correct. I mean, just like, take a look at how large this trapway is. I don't see anything clogging this. I believe this is about 3 inches, and you can definitely tell it is a super large and deep trapway. These things never, ever clog. This is right up there with the Sands. Like, it is amazing in terms of performance. Now let's have a look at bowl rinse. Even though this has straight down pointed rim jets, the bowl rinse is pretty okay overall. I have noticed that the back two rims that you may have noticed had slight issues rinsing the back rim. But even though this has straight down pointed rim jets, there's an abundance of them, so at least there's that. And that is the third generation Crane Purton toilet, a very fascinating large trap toilet. While the execution was mostly good, and I definitely think they handled everything pretty well, I definitely think there could have been some improvements in some slight aspects like bowl rinse and the pulling factor. Outside of that, this is a very fascinating toilet. But let's put this toilet into the grading scale. Let's grade it. So the overall design of the third generation Crane Purton is very plain. Sure, the design is interesting trapway wise, but I'm focusing on outward appearances here. And it's nothing to write home about, so I'm giving it a 5. The quality control on this toilet is not bad at all. It's pretty solid and rarely has any problems like defective rim jets or weird flushes or anything like that. It's pretty good overall, and I have to give it an 8. The design is very consistent. You'll rarely ever see a crooked one, which is what I like about these toilets. It's pretty great at consistency, and I have to give it a 9. Well, you can tell the trapway is pretty large, and unlike some other toilets, you can definitely tell it is a very large trapway through the opening, which is great. I give it an 8. Just like the Sand, it does have a straight down flush, but it's pretty good. Give this thing some good pressure and it's pretty powerful and pretty good. Even though the straight down flushing style has been done over and over again, at least they pulled it off pretty good here, so I have to give it an 8. So you would think that the pulling and siphoning power would be pretty good considering it's pretty well baked into the flush, right? Well, I hate to disappoint you, that really isn't the case here. This thing is pretty well known for shredding every now and then, and I have 2 theories on why that is. I mentioned both of these in my standard tri-boil review. One is that this is a very water-dependent toilet. It really needs 5 gallons or more to really operate very well. Anything less than that, then it won't do so well. That's why when you put this thing on 3.5 gallons, this thing does not do pretty well. Then you got the other reason, the large trapway. While you really couldn't tell this on the standard tri-boil, you can definitely tell the trapway is pretty large on this one. And due to that, it does create some weird problems. Like, for example, the weird area that it siphons out in, which is likely the culprit for all the shredding that happens every now and then. That being said, the pulling and siphon power, as good as it looks, it underdelivers. I have to give it a 5. So while the large trapway does underperform on the pulling and siphon part, it definitely overperforms on the performance because good luck ever clogging this thing. Yeah, due to the large trapway, these things have excellent performance. So because of that, it's getting a perfect 10. So you would think that the ball runs wouldn't be that great due to the pointed down rim jets, but it's honestly not too terrible. The ball runs is actually pretty alright given the circumstances, mostly due to the abundance of rim jets that it has. So the ball runs is alright all things considered. I'm giving it a 6. Yeah, these things are super durable. While the pulling factor does get impacted a little bit due to the large trapway, a 9 is nothing to laugh about. These things are great survivors. Now let's talk about the overall value of this toilet. You know, Crane almost had the perfect toilet on their hands, but there are some things that do drag this toilet down from being perfect. One is that the pulling and siphon power does underwhelm a bit. And this is not a quality control issue at all. It's the trapway design, and the fact that this is a very water-needy toilet needing like 5 gallons or more to do its job effectively. Another thing is that the ball runs, while it is better than both the 3rd generation Crane Stanton and even the 2nd gen Crane Worldton, still underwhelms a little bit due to these straight down pointed rim jets. But everything else, it definitely does deliver. The flush is good, the survivability is great, and the performance is actually unstoppable. It's a pretty good design overall, but there are some things that do drag it down a little bit. That's why I still kind of prefer the 3rd generation Crane Stanton in terms of functionality over the Purton. While I think they're both very solid designs, the Crane Stanton just kind of wins out for me over the Purton a little bit. Don't get me wrong, it's a pretty good toilet, but there are a few things that drag it down a little bit and prevent it from being the perfect toilet. Overall, I have to give the value a 7. The final score of the 3rd generation Crane Purton toilet is a 75 out of 100. There are a few things that do drag this toilet down from being the perfect Crane toilet. Don't get me wrong, it's still a pretty good toilet, but it definitely could have been improved upon, mostly with redesigning or reducing the trapway itself. Overall, while it's a pretty solid design, I definitely think the 3rd generation Crane Stanton is a little bit better than the Purton, but only by a surprising smidge.